Hello again, everyone. As a reminder, I'm Nick Connor. I'm a partner at Parisi Consulting, a specialist communication firm focused on delivering outcomes, not outputs. So, as Georgian quite rightly pointed out, containment bill has risen to £1 billion last year, essentially paying to turn off renewable energy, particularly wind, that the grid cannot accommodate. According to a new report from Carbon Tracker, Britain wasted enough wind power in 2023 to supply 1 million homes. The cause? And investment in the grid infrastructure have simply not kept up with pace with the rapid deployment of renewables. So, in response, National Grid has announced a 35 billion plan to expand and modernize electricity grid by 2031. Meanwhile, the newly formed National Energy Systems Operator, snazzy title, but it's also known as NESO, published a report outlining how we could achieve a 95% clean electricity system by 2030. But this will require a significant acceleration in both grid expansion and renewable deployments. NESO's recommendations cover key changes in system design, market strategies, and infrastructure investments. All of this is happening against a backdrop of growing local resistance to large-scale infrastructure projects, from wind and solar farms to pylons and substations. Any deployments are increasingly politicized, as recent examples have shown from UK's opposition to wind and solar to the Greens' pushback against pylons, as we discussed earlier. Local settlement is turning to real electoral impact. So, to join us to discuss this quite meaty topic, I'm pleased to say we have Dr. Thomas Verghese, technical manager at Enersys, a global leader in stored energy solutions for industrial applications. With over 100 years of experience and footprint in more than 100 countries, Enersys delivers reliable DC power through batteries, integrated systems, and services across motors or power solutions from aerospace to defense. We're also joined by Phil Thompson, CEO of Balance Power, a leading UK clean energy project developer. Balance Power delivers innovative, sustainable energy solutions while working closely with landowners, communities, and local authorities to support the UK's transition to a carbon-free future. Now, throughout this conversation, please put your questions in the Q&A session, and I will read them out to Thomas and Phil. But to start off with, let me turn to you, Thomas. This bill has soared. I mean, this is the new normal, right? Or are these short-term growing pains we just have to go through? I mean, is the grid's upgrade simply too slow, or is the balance between generation and infrastructure beginning to shift?
So I think there's a couple of points here. So first of all, I think to be fair to the grid and the DNOs, that they've already put a lot of time, effort, and resource into upgrading our existing grid, which has perhaps demanded it, not since the 60s. So it's number one, it's an ongoing process. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think there's a longer term trend here as we simply move away from coal and gas generation to renewables with some sort of backup. And quite frankly, that's been going on. That's going to continue now, and it's a global trend. It's not just the UK. This move to renewables is going on in Europe, the US, and while people may wish to go back to some sort of utopia of burning fossil fuels, that's not happening now. So we have to just deal with the situation as we have. To answer your question, I think clearly the increase of renewables and the fact that it's not predictable is a problem. In some ways, it's a good problem to have, but it's a problem that we need to deal with. and there are multiple ways of dealing with that.
Thank you, Thomas. Phil, we're not going back to the fossil fuel utopia of Thomas has outlined there. But I think one thing is becoming quite clear is this is a journey, and a journey we need to begin to bring everyone with us. And it doesn't seem that everyone is on board to this train to a transition train, let's call it. Is there more as an industry can do to bring along, particularly local communities who don't like some of this infrastructure, which will need to make sure that that these massive bills don't happen and the grids can cope with renewable energy.
Yeah, I think you put it probably or quite well before, where you said it's growing pains. I think the question is how long are we or the general public willing to persist with those growing pains, and how extensive are they willing to tolerate those pains being? I think the overall, the destination is worth it, but the big problem that we've got at the moment is probably the messaging from the government at the moment is probably more centered around, we are just going to smash the NIMBYs and we're going to deliver the projects. Probably not the best way, I would say, of doing it. It needs to be handled a little bit more with care and in educating this people. It's a complicated space. I've been doing this for nearly 20 years and I still find it complicated. So, trying to take the general public, local authorities on this net zero journey is not something that we should expect to push them on the journey. We're going to have to pull the public with us. There is, we're seeing political parties now pushing against net zero and against this transition, and that is because it's an easy win. People don't want solar farms and battery projects in their communities tomorrow, whereas the energy bills that we're talking about saving them and reducing curtailment bills, that's not going to happen for a good few years yet. 4 or 5 years in time, and people don't like being sold dreams, particularly by politicians. But it's very real to them to oppose projects, and that's the difficult part. It's become it has become weaponized by the political parties, but the messaging needs to be better. That that this journey is going to be worth it. NISO are aware of the curtailment bill. They know how they can bring it down. The sort of the wheels are in motion. So we're advancing how we control the projects. We're advancing how we control the network and how we're rebuilding the network. But we need to get better, and it's getting that messaging right to the public.
Now, as you both said, this is a journey. Thomas, what is this journey? What is actually needed in terms of technology turns into the grid? What is the physical things we need, either from government to push down, or from the national grid to build, or for industry to adapt
Mhm.
to help us, stop these wind farms turning off, and we actually utilize that energy?
So it's a number of things. So number one, we need to upgrade the infrastructure so that it can respond quickly to having either too much power or too little power in the system. And you saw recently in Spain, for example, where there was arguably too much power, and the system didn't quite respond as it was supposed to, or how people wanted it to. So first of all, you need to upgrade the grid system to ensure that it responds correctly to any changes. Number two, it's a grid. So we need to make sure that in some places where we have too much energy, that energy can be transferred to perhaps other places where they don't have enough energy. And we have massive country interconnects between Scandinavia, France, etc., now. So I think all of that can play a role, possibly also to Ireland. Thirdly, energy storage will play a role, and that can be either large scale. There's a large energy storage facility in Norwich in Wales, which has been going for decades effectively, and has really come into its own now. There's an argument that that sort of infrastructure could be useful, particularly in Scotland, for example, where they quite often have too much electricity. And secondly, obviously, there's battery storage as well. So battery storage can almost fall into two sort of categories. Number one, it acts as part of the energy management system. So as a buffer, if you like, to allow us to basically switch the excess of power in a controlled manner, or switch it to where it's actually needed. So I think there's that part of the energy storage story, and then there's the sort of longer term commercial reality of look, we have too much electricity here, let's recharge and store the power and then release it and make money from the difference in price as and when that's available. And each one of those points has a role to play over the next few years.
Phil, I'll come to you in a second about sort of the UK map of where energy is and where people are. But Thomas, just to pick up something you just said there, you talked a lot about new energy, new grid upgrades. So do we just need to start again, or is there existing infrastructure we can build upon?
So I think effectively we need to build around the existing infrastructure. We have cities and things. We don't have the ability to start again. So if you look at it, the obvious answer is central London. So at no point could you flatten large swathes of central London and build large electrical infrastructure, for example. You have to deal with what you've got at the moment. As with a lot of infrastructure, that's just a fact, and we have to fit in around that. Now, absolutely, we can utilize new technology in order to do so. And again, to be fair to the grid and the DNOs, that journey has already started, and there's been a huge amount of work that's gone into that as of today.
Thank you. Yeah, go on, Phil.
Just probably add to Thomas's list. I know Thomas's list probably goes on a lot longer than that anyway, but probably one of the things for me is around almost government and NESO encouraging particularly large C&I businesses to use energy more effectively and to take some more responsibility for their energy use and their energy requirements. It is going to be difficult dragging the public on the journey, putting the miles and miles of new pylons in place, new substations. That is difficult and complicated. We need to take the approach of, well, how do we reduce the number of miles that we need, and how do we decrease the complexity and the public backlash, and how do we put the responsibility a little bit more into businesses' hands? So I would like to see a situation more where if somebody is needing to build a 50 megawatt data center, that there is a requirement to say that sounds great. We're really pro data centers, but how are you going to power it? And we would like to see some, you build a wind farm that will generate you 50 megawatts a proportion of the time, or you build a solar farm that will generate 50 megawatts that will meet your needs for a large proportion of the time. It won't avoid the need for a grid connection, but in this future system that we will have, if a good proportion of the power needs are met and almost system requirements and usages monitored more in real time, that is going to reduce the need for upgrades in the future and get people to that net zero quicker. It will also, I feel, reduce commercial industrial users' energy bills. If they're pushed down that road, they will become more competitive. We will become a better place to do business. So I feel like there is a big advantage to sort of taking a more broad approach to how do we deal with this curtailment issue.
Yeah, and let's stay at that end of the pipeline, the energy consumer than the energy producer end. Is there a case where we kind of need the big energy consumers to actually use the energy, and they're not just sitting on power consumption here, because that surely would help the grid manage the system.
I
Yeah,
think.
that's what we see. It's almost the current policy design sort of makes it sort of easy for people to just go, well, I just need the grid to meet my energy needs. That's what I need. And that is then you've got then this bottleneck, which is the grid. And people are trying to take more power from the grid. At the same time, you've got developers and operators like us who can't put the power into the grid. We have the people at the other end who want it. But so we have to stop thinking about it in a way of, okay, well, how do we fix that? We can't just build new cables and new pylons and new substations. We have to think about it in a much rounded approach to speed up the transition, but also speed up cost reduction and deliverability of both projects and business goals.
And again, I think that is beginning to change now. And if you use the data center users as an example, I think we are beginning to see data centers move out of London and the Southeast, which is still a hub for data centers, but they, because it is such a bottleneck in terms of getting connections, they are beginning to move to areas such as Yorkshire, such as South Wales, and build large data centers there, where electricity connection is less of an issue, where land is less of an issue. So we're beginning to see that move already, and I to be honest, I would expect that to continue, as particularly as data center energy requirements go up, as that's associated with AI, for example.
Yeah. And that's fascinating, because AI is going to be eating a lot of energy. And if you just look at the news and the government's, plans for the industrial strategy coming out in a few months, as well as, lots of things they could say in the spend review, when, something I'm going to be watching and on my LinkedIn sort of live blogging about in great detail, about the government's plans for businesses. So is this a case where, because of the grid not going to be available, in the current plans for, was it 2036, or realistically much longer, that actually we could see a redesign of the UK economy? I won't name it, from a very large manufacturing company once, he came to the UK for a visit, and he said to me and a few others that, the way he views UK is, it's Portugal with a little bit of Singapore in the corner. And and that's since the, sort of the post-industrial reality of the UK. But could we see industry, and perhaps maybe Phil, because you're at the forefront of this, are you actually telling, your clients, and are you looking at solutions for your clients where they actually are moving to places where are generating more energy than necessarily the southeast of England?
Yeah, it's tricky, and this is where we're finding it when we do speak to large commercial and industrial operators. All businesses are still seeking the path of least resistance to decarbonize and meet their energy needs, and that's still the grid. So we're talking about the solutions, and they understand them, and they like the solution, but it is a complicated and difficult journey. And we are seeing an increasing number of businesses, as Thomas has said, we're seeing an increasing number of businesses drifting towards that. But we're still seeing some businesses who go, I love this solar farm in the southwest, but can I please just buy the power from it 200 miles away? And it's via the grid. And that's part of the problem, that we see the world where, the assets need to be built next to the use. And that is what's going to see the deployment of the projects, the spend, the reduction in businesses' costs. But it's slower than we would hope.
Thomas, I'm personally from North Wales, and we produce a lot of energy, but yet our energy prices are much more expensive than London, which doesn't
Yep.
produce much energy at all. It's a case of that there's incentives, or even trying to just get local buy-in for the infrastructure needed in these areas. You know, where I'm in Snowdonia, you know, we need lots more pylons. But could there be a sense of having those pylons by having sort of zonal pricing? What's your thoughts on those sorts of ideas?
Yeah, and I think zonal pricing, there will be winners and losers, right? So I think zonal pricing is great if you're in Scotland or North Wales or in East Yorkshire, but they might be the winners. Clearly, there will be losers though, and those losers might be London and the South East again, and so there needs to be a debate. And is there a political appetite to introduce that? And and maybe the countries of for example Scotland and Wales can play a role in that. This by zone, do we mean just very local to the pylons, i.e., if you can see a pylon, you get cheaper electricity, or by zone, do you mean actually, you know what, Wales has a surplus of electricity, therefore Wales should have a lower price per kilowatt? I don't necessarily have an absolute opinion on that, but I think that's roughly one of the things I think that needs to look at, and that will also drive investment into those areas because quite simply, if the data center's main overhead is energy cost, then clearly they might save a lot of money by moving to an area with lower energy costs, and also UK has one of the largest industrial energy costs in Western Europe. So I think yes, you need the political will, but you also need commercial reality to also nudge some of these large users to make the decisions to move stuff around. And we all know that the government can put the right area in place. But ultimately, it's going to be the end users who are going to make these decisions. The government can't force data center A to build in Liverpool, Leeds, Manchester, wherever.
And first, just say please get your questions in. We'll move to questions to the floors in a minute. We've got some already in, and we'll start reading them out. But if you've got any questions, please start thinking of them and typing them up, and we'll put them to the panel. Phil, um, if you speak to, just moving on from the zonal pricing, if you speak to Ed Miliband and his dream of replacing the energy mix, the UK's reliance on gas into renewables because it'll bring household bills down. And he's set up GB Energy to invest into infrastructure projects. But is this a full-on hope at the moment because our infrastructure is just not ready for us to make that switch?
Yeah, this is where we need to see the investment continuing to flow into projects, into the network, and we need to get this done very, very quickly. I don't envy his job now that he's got to try and to get all of this over the line over the next few years. I think the messaging for him needs to be more, he needs to sell the destination of where we're going and what this is going to be. And this is bigger than just, energy bills. Listening to the earlier comment, this is less pollution on our roads. This is less pollution in general. This is a better world that that we're going to be doing. And this is if I was in Ed Miliband's shoes, this is almost our generation's sacrifice that we need to make for it will be looking back. If Ed Miliband lasts, looking back on his time, he can say, well, actually, over this period, we made a significant difference. We were on a sort of a one-way journey to a better future, and that will come with the lower energy bills. But yeah, it's got to be sold.
Thank you. So we've got a quite good question here, and I'm going to put it to Thomas first, but Phil, please do comment after. The question is, beyond concrete assets like storage or new transmissions, how much of the curtailment problem could be mitigated by software solutions, such as advanced forecasting, dynamic congestion management, real-time market visibility for distributors, resources, etc.
Yeah, it's a good question, and again, I keep coming back to the point that it undoubtedly will play a role. There are times when we have too much electricity, and there are times when we simply don't have enough. So any solutions which mitigate that, including software, can help that that issue effectively.
Yeah, and just to maybe just put a follow-on question onto this for you, Phil, is it the case that there's a lot of ideas, there's lots of solutions available, but there seems not a lot of coordination, and it's almost the jump in energy usage from the need of having so much many more data centers to supply things like AI and cloud and whatever else a data center is needed for in the going forward in the future. Is it the case that this caught people, so we weren't ready for this? And is there a need that, we need an actual full-on strategy from the government about how they could deal with energy usage in the future?
Yeah, it is the question is a good one, and we need more of everything at the moment. There is a lack of use of technology, and but all of these things are probably now known, and we're seeing all the time just um, on battery storage, for example, the launch of new services to better manage the system more in real time, and they're making sort of great progress on it now. The unfortunate thing was probably sat on the hands for far too long, but that progress is being made now. I think it is much more of everything really, and I think in the future, if we're looking at the system today and the curtailment bill today, there is technology that we currently haven't implemented yet, and which is going to reduce that bill. So I personally think the trajectory we're on, that curtailment bill is just naturally going to be less than we think it's going to be. But yeah, we need so much more of absolutely all of those things to be able to keep household bills down.
Okay, let me put this to you then, Phil. This containment bill, should we care about it?
Yes. I think the curtailment bill it will always tell us there is a lack of something in the
Mm.
system and in the organization of the energy system. We shouldn't have one at all, but if there is one, this should be very, very minimal. So I think for the general consumers and everybody on this call, the curtailment bill will always be an indication of a lack of efficiency in the system and a requirement for change. So yeah, we should always care about it.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that. The curtailment bill is an indication. It's a symptom of something not correct in the system, and quite frankly, the system is less resilient if you have too much electricity, in the same way as it's less resilient if you have not enough electricity. So I think the curtailment bill is just an indication that the system is unbalanced, which isn't good, and we need to do something about that. And there are a number of answers to that.
And so it isn't good, and it's very easy when we come onto these calls to get very in the UK bubble. But Thomas, maybe you could take us on a global journey here, and how are we doing compared to other countries? I mean, we're doing okay with renewable in our energy mix, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
and these might be just sort of growing pains. Who should we look at as doing things well? Who are doing things bad? We shouldn't look at.
so as always, Scandinavia does very well on all of these things. They have very few people and a lot of land, of course, and arguably too much electricity. So Scandinavia do very well. France, because of their heavy dependence on nuclear, has quite a low CO2 per kilowatt hour generated figure. So the UK, I think, is in the mix. We're arguably doing better than other countries that are close to us. And I certainly think we've done well to jump on wind quite so quickly as we have done, and that's made a significant difference to the CO2 per megawatt hour that we generate. So yeah, we're in the middle effectively on that score. One other thing I think I just want to touch on, which I think was mentioned on the previous call, but it's regulation, and you're right, it's not just the UK, and we sit in our UK-centric bubble. But from a battery point of view, and obviously batteries have a significant role to play in this, there is the new EU battery regulation 1542, which came out in 2023, and that takes a holistic approach to battery production, use, and end-of-life performance. And while the UK is arguably not part of that, it will undoubtedly follow. And that will have a significant impact on how we use batteries, not just today, but in the future, and that would include car batteries. And I think it was mentioned on the previous call about second-hand batteries, and a lot of that is addressed as part of the EU battery regulation. Now, clearly, it's regulation, so it always will add a certain amount of bureaucracy, which ultimately is equivalent to a certain amount of cost. But again, the overall direction is positive.
Yeah, that's interesting when we're talking about regulations, future regulations coming with this transition. Phil, you're obviously working with businesses. Is there a feeling at the moment that the regulation is good and easy to deal with for your clients? And sort of a second sort of bite of the regulation question here is, do you think there needs to be new regulation for industrial use of energy in the UK?
Yeah, I think there's, I made the point earlier. I think we have a very strong, reliable regulatory environment, probably one of the best. I think it does need to adapt more rapidly in the changing environment. And as I said, I would like to see the regulations change to push businesses more to generate and meet their own energy needs. I think if they did that, it would, I don't think any business, it would cost them more. They would save money, but I think people need to be in a future regulatory environment, people need to be pushed to do it. It needs to be a requirement that, it's your responsibility to do this where possible.
Thomas, until the grid gets upgraded, we spoke about there's these short-term gains where we're just not using the energy properly. We're turning off lots of power, and places are not getting it, and we're potentially seeing blackouts coming, even though we're producing lots of energy. So, what are the solutions around that? Is it something about we need batteries and storage units so we can, keep on using that energy. And then it comes down to cost. Who should pay for that? Is this a government thing? Should government be installing these batteries, or is this the burden should be on businesses? But they need to be more energy efficient and have those sort of storage units in place.
So to go back to Phil's point, I think it's a push and a pull. So clearly you need government to have regulation to basically almost penalise for people if the grid drops out, for example. So that means that you make everything resilient, which it obviously needs to be. But you also need to incentivise people, and that's clearly that's large users. For example, and that can be, as previously mentioned, something in the planning, for example, X amount of energy storage, perhaps going off grid during peak times, being paid to go off grid during peak times. So it's push and a pull. From the grid point of view, energy storage can be used in two ways. As I said, it can be used to manage the grid correctly, to basically so that if there is too much power energy coming in, you can switch it off in a controlled manner, and a lot of that there has always been a variation in the amount of power that the UK has required. The cup of tea at 9 o'clock that always used to come on. So this isn't a new problem. It's just perhaps slightly less predictable, and the technology is there to handle that, and energy storage can play a role in that handling of too much. In addition, we can also have standalone batteries which will store electricity and then release it and as long as it makes commercial sense, and also encourage large battery users, for example, the data centers, perhaps to use their assets in a way that can basically smooth out the peaks and troughs of the requirement of both the generation and the use within the country.
Yeah, the peak and troughs is fascinating. Phil, the national grid is not going to upgraded. It's not going to be upgraded till 2030. They estimate it's probably could be late. All things are. But the government's net zero target's 2035. So are we in danger with the increase of data centers, with the boom of AI, needing more energy, all the cars, and we've heard a lot about fleets and consumer cars, turning to electric. There's going to be much more power needed, much more than we are today. So are we in danger of not hitting our net zero targets? And is there a short-term solution such as microgrids and who are then feeding back into the national grid or anything like that, which could really help I guess our problem with energy consumption and production and able to make sure that we're utilizing it all properly.
Yeah, I think that use of technology that you said is the biggest easy win. For me, the biggest easy win is better use of technology and better use of regulation to make people do it. Those are the easy wins that we've got on the net zero journey. If the way the system is, the lack of use of technology, the system is currently based on almost like a worst case scenario operation. So it's if every single wind farm is generating, every single solar farm is generating, every single battery storage, that is then modeled for the impact that would have on the grid in a worst case scenario. But if we need to get to a world where the technology that we have means that modeling is done completely different, because they don't have to worry that all of these technologies would be there at any one time. And there is, if they did a better, even just a much smaller, better job, that worst half hour on the most windy, sunniest day of the year doesn't become a problem. They could just deal with technology solutions that catered for that one worst day, you will probably see an exponential improvement in the outlook. Now, there are things that are there that are being done to sort of monitor and improve on those things. I'm not saying they're not there, but if we do a better job on that, then we're going to get to the destination a lot quicker if we're just sort of advancing that technological side.
Phil, staying with you, we've got a question here from the floor. How important are interconnectors? Are we too reliant on them? Is there an energy security risk?
I don't think so. I'm probably not the biggest fan of interconnectors, just from a resilience point of view. Or always relying on a sort of a third party. They're connectors, not generators. In the worst case scenario, are we, if we were really, really desperate and we actually had to rely on the interconnectors, there is probably a European wide problem. So maybe those interconnectors wouldn't solve our problems. It is a necessity. We do need them. The more interconnectors we can have, the better job that we're going to have of keeping bills low and balancing the system. I probably would have a preference to say that we almost need to be islanded better if we can be, and we have the resilience from the interconnectors. But yeah, they are a necessity. But I would like to see that we don't rely on them.
Thomas, I have a question here from the floor for you. I think this one's a good one for you. When encouraging battery use, does the government need to consider incentives end of life thinking? The Circular Economy Task Force is due to publish a strategy in autumn this year. What should the task force consider?
Yeah, so if you look at the end of life of say a lithium battery, which I think that the question is referring to, the problem there is what happens to that product at the end of its life. And at the moment, it, you, it can be recycled, but it's very expensive. Or it can be repurposed and used in some other way. And again, the EU battery regulation, which I referenced earlier, they're introducing what's called battery passports, which will basically give a history of that specific product. So that if you do need to go down the repurposing route, then you have some more confidence that product has had a good and happy life prior to you using it. So we may see, for example, cross application usage of batteries. Batteries from cars may end up in home energy storage. Would be one typical example. And again, I think you're looking at a holistic approach to this. It's where does the materials come from that go into the battery? How is the battery made? Is it made in a carbon efficient, low energy use environment? Is it used correctly through its life? And then finally, what happens to it at the end of its life? Clearly, we don't want these products as they come to the end of life to be basically buried in a hole somewhere. So I think it's important that we go down the sort of circular economy, sustainable route, and use the materials that are in the batteries at the end of their life to basically to make new ones, if you like. And I think through regulation, that is beginning to happen. The targets are in the 2030s for lithium, but at least the issue has been recognised and is beginning to be dealt with.
We've actually got a question here from John Trenholm, who asks actually on that point. When reuse is considered, what is the typical use?
So the typical example that's used is a change from cyclic to basically on demand. So if you think of an electric car battery, you're doing a lot of high rate, short duration discharges without getting too technical. Basically, you put your foot on the accelerator and you accelerate off. And that's the first thing that will go. Anybody who's got an electric car will know that A, when it's cold, and B, as the car ages, the first thing you notice is the acceleration isn't as good. Now, there is an argument that high rate discharge usage is not as critical. For example, in backup battery systems, where basically you're slowly recharging the battery, I don't know, during the day, at night when the electricity is cheap, and then releasing it during peak times. So that change in use is kind of recognised when you go from first use to second use.
Thank you. Now we've come to closing remarks, and I'll start with you, Phil. What I would like you to do during your closing remarks, I'd like you to answer two questions. First, what is the one thing you want everyone on this call to take away from discussion? And two is what is the one solution to bring down the curtailment bill you would like to see?
Good questions. I think the one probably takeaway is I feel like people look at the curtailment bill and the difficulties with electric cars. It's almost my one takeaway is it's going to be worth it. This journey over the next 10 years, it's going to be worth it. Once it's done, we'll be happy. There will be the pain on the way, but I would say for everybody I know everybody is probably in the sector, but I genuinely feel like this curtailment bill, everything else, it's going to be worth it, and it will inevitably be less painful than we think it will be looking ahead. What is the one thing that I would like to see change? For me, it's, as I said before, it's the easy wins. Let's do better at the very, very easy things that we can do to get us further down the line. So no, let's push for better implementation of technology, push government for better use of policy to make people make the right decisions. And that's not through pressure, but through encouragement. Let's see people generate more of their own needs. Let's look at ways that we can make this transition easier.
Yeah, sadly, I think I'm in complete agreement with Phil here. I think certainly I think we need to recognise that we're already down this path. We're not going back. I think that's the one takeaway in all of this. We're just going to have to deal with these issues as and when they arise now. And secondly, multiple commercially incentivize the use of new technologies, of new methods to smooth out this demand. And that might be at small scale, at house A, house B level, or it might be at larger scales, whether that be large nuclear, whatever. It's across the board, and I think that those will be my two takeaways. I think that the technology exists for all of this stuff. I think we can use existing technologies. Clearly, there'll be more technologies coming down the pipeline, but there's enough today to smooth over what again has been an issue for decades, and we just have to continue to deal with it now in a cost-effective manner.
Dr. Thomas Verghese from Enersys and Phil Thompson from Balance Power. Thank you very much for your brilliant insights. As we know, the grid needs to be upgraded. The technology, the solutions are there, but a bit of work is needed from government to coordinate it and everyone to sing from the same hymn sheet so that we're utilizing that energy and making sure that our future and current industries, as well as modes of transport and our way of life, keeps up. Thank you very much.